This next clip is the main argument for answering the second question, does Uthman meet the qualifications for being a lawful or unlawful combatant based on U.S. interpretation of international law? The Third Geneva Convention, Article 4, Section 2, states that prisoners of war, in the sense of the present conventions, are persons belonging to one of the following categories who have fallen into the power of the enemy: members of other militias and members of other volunteer corps, including those of organized resistance movements belonging to a party to the conflict and operating in or outside their own territory, even if the territory is occupied, provided that such militias or volunteer corps, including such organized resistance movements, fulfill the following conditions: A, that of being commanded by a person responsible for his subordinates; B, that of having a fixed distinctive sign at a recognizable distance; C, that of carrying arms openly; and D, that of conducting their operations in accordance with the laws and customs of the war. The United States interprets Section 2 of Article 4 of the Third Geneva Convention to have failed in addressing combatants that meet some of the requirements but not all, and therefore the U.S. has the authority to use the title of an unlawful combatant as a term between a lawful combatant and a civilian. The United States first interpreted Article 4 to make the difference between an unlawful and lawful combatant in a 1942 case against Nazi spies, and this has been used as U.S. president ever since then. Then the Bush administration clearly defined, while a lawful combatant is required to have a fixed distinctive sign recognizable at a difference, an unlawful combatant does not. Also, the main difference is that while unlawful combatants are also subject to trial and punishment by military tribunals for their unlawful actions and not given POW status, lawful combatants are given POW status. Now, regarding the case of Uthman Abdul Rahman Muhammad Uthman, he does not deserve POW status since his involvement in the Al-Qaeda group during the Afghanistan-U.S. war does not meet all four requirements as outlined in Section 2 of the Article 4 of the Third Geneva Convention. Now, in December of 2001, Uthman was captured by Pakistani forces near the Afghanistani-Pakistani border with a group of 30 other Arabs. Now, the U.S. alleges that this group are all Al-Qaeda fighters, some who have been closely tied to Osama bin Laden. Members of Al-Qaeda are deemed unlawful combatants due to not meeting all four requirements as outlined in Article 4. Article 4 requires that for a group to be given POW status, they must have a chain of command, a recognizable sign at a difference, they carry their arms openly, and they follow the laws in accordance with the customs of war. Now, although Al-Qaeda does have a chain of command, they did not carry their arms openly, and they did not have a distinctive sign recognizable at a difference. Therefore, Uthman can be treated as an unlawful combatant without prisoner of war status and will be sent to a military tribunal for his unlawful actions. Given that the United States interprets Section 2 of Article 4 of the Third Geneva Convention to fail in addressing the difference between an unlawful and lawful combatant, then the U.S. has the authority to say that combatants that don't meet all the requirements can be deemed unlawful combatants and not be given prisoner of war status. Now, since Uthman is a part of Al-Qaeda who did not meet all four requirements, then the U.S. can try him as an unlawful combatant and he will not be given prisoner of war status. This next clip is the respondents responding to the main argument. The applicants, the United States, does not have the right to interpret Article 4 of the Third Geneva Convention to include a category of unlawful combatants. The Third Geneva Convention explains the rights of lawful combatants, and the Fourth Geneva Convention explains the rights of civilians. A person can be either civilian or a lawful combatant. There is no gray area in between. If the person does not meet all four requirements found in Article 4 of the Third Geneva Convention, then they are to be considered a civilian and given civilian rights. This next clip is the rebuttal by the applicants. Although Article 4 of the Third Geneva Convention does not outright say what an unlawful combatant is, they give room for interpretation by stating that a lawful combatant is someone who fits all four requirements in Section 2 of Article 4. The U.S. has held a definition of what an unlawful combatant is ever since their 1942 case against Nazi spies, defining an unlawful combatant as someone who, without uniform, come secretly throughout the lines for the purpose of waging war.